Hi viewers, Jackie Dresser here with the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program. If you tuned in last week, our podcast was talking about some bricks measurements that we took in our railroad block and the map we created from them. And we noticed there was a correlation between some potassium deficiency that we observed in the vineyard and inhibited ripening. Potassium deficiency was not the only correlation with bricks, and this week we're going to talk about how crop load related to the ripening in that vineyard. So crop load is a measurement that indicates vine balance. So how well matched is the size of a vine or its exposed leaf area to the fruit that it's carrying and attempting to ripen. And this is sort of the crux of all the research that we're focused on here at the lab recently. So crop load can be measured in a few ways. It first emerged in 1910 as Rivaz index. So Rivaz index relates pruning weight and crop grown in the same year. So you take your harvest weight and the pruning weight that you take following that harvest, and it's the ratio between those two numbers. And in the literature, crop load between 5 and 10 is considered balanced, though that research was definitely tailored toward vinifera. So Dr. Terry Bates has been diving through our data inventory here at the lab into some old studies, and he created this really nice figure to demonstrate for Concord growers what areas of different vine sizes, what crop load they can actually tolerate and what that translates to in terms of yield. So you'll see here in the middle, in the balance section, between 8 and 11 in crop load, depending on the size of your vine, you're going to need to carry a different crop in order to keep that vine balanced and ensure your perennial vineyard health. So another way that crop load has been measured, and you can see that on the y-axis here, is in the growth yield relationship. So the growth yield relationship is relating pruning weight from year 1 back to yield in year 2. So you're taking the pruning weight first and the yield that followed that pruning weight. So another way you can measure crop load is in the leaf area to fruit weight ratio. So if you measure your exposed and functional leaf area, you can look at that in relationship to the yield that it carries. Leaf area is a little tougher to measure. Involves, defoliation of vines, leaf area meters, these sort of things. But we kind of use NDVI as a little bit of a surrogate. So NDVI, as we've drilled into you by this point, is only relative when we're using our proximal sensors in the vineyard. So even just having a relative NDVI, which is sensitive to the exposed canopy that it's sensing, we are able to produce relative crop load maps with those maps. So we can take the NDVI data layer from this same railroad block where we've been doing a lot of this intensive sampling. We can also take our yield data layer, and we can kind of fuse those together, and we end up with this relative crop load map. So we're using NDVI. We're using some of our manual pruning weights to calibrate that NDVI map over to a pruning weight map. And then we're looking at the yield that came out of the yield monitor. So it's only a relative map, but a lot of the work that we've been doing recently is in sampling for pruning weight in the same places where we had bricks. So we will be able to see a more high resolution absolute map of crop load just as soon as we get those samples done. So we'll check back in with you. But for now, it's still really nice to be able to see this relative map and to locate areas in the deep purple or blue that are overcropped or severely overcropped. So if we go back to our figure here from Dr. Bates, the severely and overcropped vines, we don't know their vine size explicitly yet. We will, but they're in that 11 to 14 range on the Rivaz index. Or in this case, we want to take those vines down from severely overcropped into balance. And the way we're going to do that, since we're going to prune uniformly, we're going to take a machine and hand follow up through this vineyard. So we're leaving essentially a fixed node number across this whole vineyard. But in the spring, even if we have more shoots than we need here, we can differentially shoot thin this or fruit thin this mid-season after we do a crop estimate. We can take those severely overcropped and overcropped areas, and we can treat them differently in the spring than we will the rest of the vineyard. Where the vines are undercropped, we will probably leave those shoots alone and just let nature take its course. Where they're balanced, we'll adjust and we'll see if the shoot number that we left is sustainable for that class of vine size, or if we do need to thin those some. And then the areas where it's overcropped or severely overcropped, we're going to impose a larger magnitude of shoot thinning in those areas to try to bring this vineyard into uniformity and bring all the vines back into balance. Because the penalty if we don't do that is that, especially in areas where they were potassium deficient, if you have too much crop hanging on that vine, you're not going to be able to build carbohydrates. So in this winter, when we're seeing some sub-zero temperatures, your buds might not be as hardy. You don't have the carbohydrates in storage for when bud break happens, and you need that for that initial burst of growth and energy in the spring. And if your vines were overcropped, your vine size is going to be reduced because you don't have the capacity to grow that leaf area so that it can start creating photosynthate for the rest of the plant in the spring. So by balancing these vines, really, if we get everything right in the vineyard, if we're doing nutrient and water management properly, if our IPM program is solid, then crop load management is really our point of defense to make sure that this vineyard perennially is going to continue to grow in vine size and yield potential, and is going to continue to be a profitable block here for our farm, and hopefully for yours too. So if you have questions or you want to engage in some dialogue about how to make this work for you, or other ways, maybe you don't have access to a spatial yield monitor, maybe you just have NDVI. There are ways that we can start to look at these things in your vineyards too. So feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help, and leave some comments in the comment section below if you like, and we'll be back next week with more fun.